Welcome to the CMO Chapter podcast, where we dive deep into the dynamic world of Chief Marketing Officers. Join us as we explore the careers, insights, and strategies of top marketing executives who shape the brands we know and love. Whether you're a seasoned marketer, aspiring CMO, or simply just curious to understand what it really takes to step into the shoes of a CMO. This podcast is your backstage pass to discovering what it's like to really lead and innovate in the ever-evolving landscape of business. Stay tuned as we uncover the stories of the visionaries behind the brand. Okay, so I am absolutely delighted today to welcome Tony Gruebner. So, Tony, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. I know that we've had some, you've had some great people on, so I'm very pleased to join that list.
Oh, look, you're very, very welcome indeed. I was really keen to chat to you really today, obviously, to cover off a bit more around your background. Very much, I think one of your real sort of areas of expertise that we're going to talk about is obviously AI specifically within marketing as well. And then a little bit more around the future of probably what we're seeing around CMOs and sort of what the future is going to look like, given that AI is the thing that's going to keep evolving. But before we crack on, can you introduce yourself, please?
So I'm Tony Gruebner. I have got a slightly unusual sort of path towards sort of being a chief marketing officer. I come from more of a analytical, geeky numbers background. I'm originally from New Zealand, if you couldn't get that from the accent, and I did a range of roles. Really just a range of roles. I studied commerce. And then went to London, or went to Dublin first, and then went to London, and then did a bit of the overseas experience in my 20s, and then came back. I didn't quite come all the way back to New Zealand. I sort of came back to Melbourne just to sort of stay for a year maybe and see how it goes, and that was 13 years ago, and I'm still here now. So I have, in that time, I've really worked at two sort of main sort of places in terms of where I've worked. I worked at Sportsbet for 9 years. Which was a very interesting journey from 2011 through to sort of 2020. It went from being a relatively small business to the behemoth that it is today during that time, and that was a lot of fun. And I did a range of different roles there, but mainly sort of in the analytical background, and obviously working with the marketing teams. I mean, everything at Sportsbet is around marketing and as pretty much anyone probably watching this will know. And then I moved to Pepperstone. So Pepperstone, probably fewer people will know exactly what Pepperstone is, but Pepperstone's a financial trading company, one of the largest financial trading companies in the world. Australian started and Australian owned. It is essentially B2C financial trading, and in some ways a lot of similarities to sports betting, just in the financial markets. Heavily regulated, global. Pepperstone has customers in 173 countries around the world. And that was when I really I started in the chief marketing officer role. And that was sort of my first squarely sort of marketing role. At that sort of level, I should say. I obviously did a range of different marketing roles prior to that. But it was interesting to sort of be in charge of a marketing function for the 3.5 years that I was there. And then over the last probably 6 to 12 months, I've been doing a bit of sort of freelancing, being a bit of a sort of free agent, working with a lot of startups, and doing some really interesting stuff. And I think, as you mentioned, sort of dabbling in the sort of AI world, and as everyone seems to have AI expert on their LinkedIn profile these days. I've been coming from a data background, and also having led data science teams going back over 10 years now. It was obviously subject matter that a lot of which I was very familiar with, but a lot of which is very new. And so it's really been good to refresh on that. And I've got a lot of sort of thoughts. I mean, I think the thing about hopefully what I can get across from an AI perspective is that my skills in that space are not technical. They are in the understanding of what it means commercially, and what it means for a CMO, what it means for a CEO, what it means for businesses. And so I've spent a lot of time in that space thinking, and it's a as you know, Lucy, it's a very interesting space,
Oh, yeah.
and a very fast-growing space. So probably by the time this podcast is out, who knows if everything will be still still sort of the same. But yeah, it's an interesting space, and I think I think one way or another it's here to stay, and for good or bad. And it's certainly something that everyone's got to get their head around. So
Yeah.
hope that gives a little bit of an insight as to a bit of my background.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. I guess I was curious I was, reviewing obviously your profile, and, I've met with you, and we've had various conversations, etc., a few times, but you being at that, because you actually were, as you said, at Sportsbet for, I think it was about 9.5 years. You got to executive GM level where you were managing, it was about 30, 40 people at that level.
In that role, 40. Yeah, I'd done roles prior to that were 200 and something, and sort
Yeah.
of operational
Yeah.
roles. But yeah, in the sort of data and analytics space, it's probably about 40 people. Yeah.
So I guess my question to you is, you've come from this real sort of, you mentioned it quite earlier, like the sort of geeky numbers, the data sort of side of things. And naturally, I've met quite a lot of people in that space. And I've always found, if you've got that capability and that skill set, but you've got the ability to also have that extroverted sort of leadership mentality, I look at someone like you, incredibly smart. You've obviously done very well to get to the remit that you have. So, have you always been ambitious? Like, have you always had that drive to? Did you always think, okay, that's where I want to get to one day to be a CMO, or did it honestly just sort of evolve organically?
Yes and no. I mean, I think definitely my career's evolved organically. I think that's and I've been. I'd like to sort of sit here and say I've been very purposeful with every step that I've done, but a lot of it's sort of fallen into place. But when you look back, I think there's probably a lot in that was probably intentional, even if you didn't know it.
Mm,
And I think my skills and this is a blessing and a curse. My skills is as an all rounder and as ability to bring all that together. So I mentioned that I come from the analytical space, but I'm not the most analytical person. And I've been working obviously in the marketing space, but there's people who've been working for 20 odd years in the marketing space. Um, my real ability is to bring all that together and sort of put those pieces of the puzzle together, which I think is a really useful or an incredibly useful skill. Um, but you need people that are specialists, obviously, to go alongside the generalists. Um, and then in terms of sort of broader leadership, which you sort of were referring to, I mean, I think that introverted, extroverted, I don't think it matters whether or not you're introverted or extroverted
mhm,
as a leader. I think that's completely irrelevant. But what really does matter is your ability to sometimes as a leader you need to be introverted, and sometimes as a leader you need to be extroverted. And I think what's really important is the ability to actually scale and work out. And this is where EQ comes in, obviously, but really understand when's the time to do each of those things. And I think that's the skill that you've really got to have. It's because you're a certain personality type. I think that's overblown, and we do all those disc profiles and all that kind of stuff, which is nice to know and nice to know about yourself. But at the same time, it's your ability to actually broaden and actually have range, I suppose, in terms of what you can do.
mhm,
That becomes much more
mhm.
important.
Yeah. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there, just around, emotional intelligence, because, you're managing large teams like that. It's all well and good saying, okay, we've got this goal, we've got this objective, but you've got to have a temp gauge. You've got to be able to sort of really, as a leader, as you've said, sort of understand, okay, well, really the team's down, but why is it down? Like, culturally sort of identify that, as you've said. What do you think like a good CMO needs to have? You mentioned a few things there, but anything you'd want to sort of like hone into more so?
I mean, I hate to give, for the same reason we're just talking about, I hate to give sort of examples that are, you have to be this, you have to be that, you can't be this. I think there
Yeah.
needs to be a range of things. Um, back to my last point, but I think the CMO role has obviously changed a lot over the last 10 or 15 years with the advent of digital and the need to have people that are more numeric, and the sort of art and the science um, of marketing have really come together. And I think in some regards, I think I mean, marketing broadly used to be about the art, and then it's become much more about the science. I think we've probably over-indexed towards the science, and I think that it needs that right blend. And this is where it comes back to the point that I was making before around that. How are you? Can you blend both of those things? Yes, I come from an analytical background, but I've had to make sure that I understand the art side of marketing, the branding side, all that kind of stuff, because that's all massively important. And that's essentially what a CMO is. A CMO's, I mean, it goes without saying, but a CMO is tasked with the whole of the marketing department. They're not tasked with one part of it. And so the person that you can always hire a person that's brilliant at performance marketing. You can hire a person that's brilliant at these things. But unless you bring it all together, and that's where that EQ point comes in. And I think, ironically, this becomes, in some regards, I don't think any AI changes any of this. It just heightens it. Everything just gets amplified. And so the points that I'm making, I don't think that changes in an AI world. I mean, you mentioned, we talked a bit about EQ. As of yet, ChatGPT doesn't have EQ. It doesn't know when the team's down and you have to pick them up and all that kind of stuff. And that's where, those kind of skills, those human skills, if you will, become much more important in that in an AI-driven world. So, in short, in terms of what you're saying, I think the CMO has to really understand. It has to be a jack of all trades, and the danger with that is how do you operate in this world of. I like to talk about the Dunning-Kruger syndrome quite a lot because Dunning-Kruger is where if you know a little about something, you overestimate your abilities in that. But I think the thing is with businesses becoming so complex, and especially the CMO role becoming very complex, you operate all the time in this Dunning-Kruger world. Yeah. You operate in this world where your staff will know more about this particular topic than you do. And so the biggest skill you can have is how do I operate actually well in that Dunning-Kruger world when I might know a little bit about what you're talking about, but I don't know everything. I don't know as much as you know. And I think that's a skill in itself. And I think about really good leaders is someone that can have that humility or the intelligence to really intelligent might be the wrong word, but the ability to pick things up quickly and at least, sift through the bull if you need to, or pick up those things and operate in a world where, hey, I don't actually really know what I'm talking about, but how can I still be efficient in that space? And you find yourself in that world so much as a CMO or in executive role, to be honest, because your remit is so broad and so wide.
Yeah, absolutely. I think naturally having that ability to sort of, I think also be quite vulnerable when you need to do as well, I think it's going to be important. Let's talk about AI. I guess one reason I was very keen to chat to you is because I feel, you've, let's be honest, like you've, I think, shared on LinkedIn as well. You've also written a book, which I really also want to talk about as well, AI for CEOs. So I'm just going to ask, what is AI?
It's a really good place to start. I mean, there's a lot of definitions, and I think it's a really important place to start because I think AI gets sort of made into all these other things, and I think we get well ahead of ourselves before actually sitting back and going, well, actually, what is this thing? And then the next question's got to be, well, why? Which I think a lot of people jump 2 steps ahead and don't ask those questions. I mean, in my mind, and I try to keep things as simple as possible, A, for my own head, but B, for communicating to others. But really, it's about the automation of human thought in some regards. And that's not actually strictly what AI actually is, but for all intents and purposes, that's what it is. And so, I mean, automation is nothing new in businesses. I mean, right from the industrial age, which is, over 100 years old, like we've been trying to automate things, but we've automated everything that doesn't require human thought. AI gives us the capability, doesn't necessarily mean it's always the right thing to do, and doesn't even necessarily mean it's good for society, but it gives us the capability to actually automate human thought. And so when we're typing our stuff into ChatGPT, the amazing thing about it is that we're getting answers back which are, there's no rules that have come up with those answers. So there's no if-then statement that's working in the background to actually answer that. There's actually, it's a replication of human thought that comes through. And so hopefully that's oversimplifying what AI actually is, but for all intents and purposes, that's what it is.
I think you've answered it well because, when I've asked this question to a few people and you get so many, as you said, we could go really deep or you can keep it really simple. And I think the best way is, to try and keep it as simple as possible. So at least you get more people trying to go, oh, okay, I get it now. I understand. What's the I guess what are the practical ways that you're seeing? Because I think, you have got this skill set where, you've got this data analytics, you've been a senior marketer at an exec level. You also do have purposely really started to dig deep within the world of AI. So how do you see marketers starting to use AI, within their daily roles in the future? Like what part's that going to play?
Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing, uh, a massive adoption in things like use of things like ChatGPT and
Hmm.
generative AI. Most of it though is quite ad hoc, and by ad hoc I mean you. A lot of people are probably using accounts like ChatGPT accounts that probably aren't even they're not even allowed to use in the workplace.
Yeah. Hmm.
So and I say that not to dob on people about their security thing, but I say that because it shows how these systems are not properly integrated into workflows. They're not properly integrated. So a lot of it's ad hoc. A lot of it's people are using it because they find it incredibly useful. Um, and the more and more I use of it, the more useful I find it, and the better I get at using it. Um, and the more I find that, the more it can do. But I think the next evolution has to be, how do these things actually integrate? So at a really, really basic level, and I could give 100 different sort of basic examples, but like you might use ChatGPT to formulate what you want to put in a PowerPoint if you're creating a PowerPoint
Uh-huh.
slide. Um, but I'm still copy and pasting that text across
Yeah.
into text boxes in Microsoft PowerPoint and all that kind of stuff, and formatting my slides and whatever. And when you actually add it up, I actually think, well, did I actually save any time here? And maybe I didn't. Or maybe what I saved was negligible. I think how that actually integrates into our day-to-day working, where it comes to the point where the slides get automatically created. And I mean, this exists. Don't get me wrong,
Mm,
but it still can and sometimes be clunky, and
mm,
it's still sort of in its evolution. But I think that integration point is really important. And one of the things CMOs have to think about is there's this sort of saying that for every SaaS product that gets used, there's going to be an AI replacement.
yeah.
I think that's probably true in some regards, but I think the interesting thing to think about is going to be, well, let's just say we use 8 different tools in our marketing department.
Mm,
Um, are we now going to have 8 AI tools that replace them, or are we going to have one AI tool that replaces them, like a ChatGPT universal thing, or are we going to end up with 25 different tools that replace those 8? And I think a, a lot of teams at the moment seem to be going down that path of that 25, because they're going
uh-huh.
to end up because people in teams are just using their own stuff and bring it all in, and there's no real orchestrated thought around,
Yeah.
well, how does this actually going to look, and how do we integrate it? And I mean, all the AI tools are fantastic. I think that like
Yeah.
there's so many good ones, and I know we talk about ChatGPT's hallucinations and everything, but they're getting less and less. And people say, do you use ChatGPT? Do you use Gemini? Do you use this?
Yeah.
They're all good. Like, I think the point though is which one integrates better, which one actually fits into the system better. I think that should be much more of the consideration in that conversation.
Mhm. What about, I guess I'm curious to know. I mean, one thing that I guess I probably get a little bit concerned to a degree, or maybe I just don't know enough about it, is what about the ethical components to this? So, you know, are there any sort of ethical concerns that you think that we should probably, keep in mind when we're actually using AI? Like, what would you say?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think you're right to be concerned. I think it's. I mean, we're already seeing it, and to be honest, I think there's a lot that we're not actually seeing, but we're seeing the outputs of it through social media algorithms and things like that, and what impacts that's had on the world, and essentially training people, like the users of social media, to act in certain ways and think in certain ways. Um, it's but I think the thing to consider here, and it goes back to what I was talking about before, is AI is the amplification of what already exists, and so that's why it's dangerous. It's not necessarily dangerous. I mean, there are examples of this, but it's not necessarily dangerous because we're creating new problems. It's dangerous because we're amplifying the existing problems,
Yeah.
much more so. So, if just using a sort of basic example, if you've got an insurance company that's working out how to do the premiums, and the data tells us that certain ethnicities are more dangerous to need to have higher premiums because they're and then we give that to the hands of an algorithm without sensor checking it. What does it do for those ethnicities, or if it was gender, or if it was those kind of things. And there's hundreds of different examples along those lines, and especially in the marketing space. I mean, I remember I was in a conversation with a senior marketer who was working in a government agency, and they sort of raised the point of how someone in their team came to them and they said, "We need a piece of Aboriginal artwork, but we're struggling to find someone at the moment, and it's very expensive what we can find. Can we use Midjourney to generate a piece of Aboriginal artwork?" And their instant response, and everyone in the conversation that I was with, their instant response was, "Hell no, you can't do that. That's deeply unethical for the government to be bypassing an Aboriginal artist that could be getting paid." But at the same time, then the question got expanded. Well, what if we were looking for a Italian piece of artwork? Would that be okay to then bypass an Italian artist? And it very quickly gets into a world where you realize there is no rules on this stuff. There's no guide, and we're going to have to make our own rules as to what, as marketers, as to what we think is right and what we think is wrong. And I mean, hopefully the government sort of catches up and thing, but don't think you can rely on that. It's really not that's not a dig on the government. It's just really challenging. The space is so fast moving. So yeah, the ethical side is a deep concern, and I think businesses really need to, and senior leaders in businesses really need to be responsible for it. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do it.
I want to talk a bit more about your book. So, why did you decide to write the book?
Good question. I was wondering that a few times as I was writing it.
Why have I done this?
No, in some regards, it was cathartic for me. I mean, I mentioned before, I've worked with data scientists, as they're called, building algorithms and doing some really cool stuff in this space. And I think that, so I have quite a bit of a background in it. But I think, I mean, when ChatGPT was announced, everything sort of blew up in terms of AI. And the reason why everything blew up was all of a sudden everything was visible. There was an interface to AI. Doesn't mean that AI just all of a sudden existed at that moment. And that was sort of it's been a long sort of trajectory to get there. And I think that, so I had a good background in this, but at the same time, I felt like, if anything else, I needed to find a quick way to refreshing and getting speed on, what is happening and how quickly is this happening, and if nothing else, form some own views in my own head. And one of the easiest ways to do that was, well, maybe it wasn't the easiest way to do it, but one of the ways to do this was to put this into a book and put this down into words, and to really format it. I mean, I think writing a book was something I'd never really thought about doing, but it always sounded cool. And I look up now and I see a range of books on my bookshelf, and my book's there. That's pretty cool.
Very cool.
But at the same time, I think it was more so a cathartic experience for me, just to actually get my head straight around a lot of these topics, because there was so much swirling around about it.
So the book is called AI for CEOs. So is this purely for, I mean, tell me, who would you say the book is intentionally, for? I mean, I've already had a bit of a summary and I've looked at it, and it seems like you've gone down the whole, you're simplifying what it is. It's quite similar to our conversation that we're having. So is it aimed at, I guess, educating businesses around the do's and don'ts, or?
Yeah, the tagline underneath that is the least technical book you'll ever read about AI. And there's times when it has to get somewhat technical, because it's pretty hard to talk about AI without being technical. But I mean, I think that the point is that it's the AI for CEOs is obviously just a catchy title. It's AI for senior leaders, and people that definitely, and this is probably most people that don't really understand what this AI thing is and how to apply it into their businesses, and they need some strategic frameworks and a commercial oversight. And I think there's a real gap there, because so much of what you read about AI is so technical. And from a business point of view, the technical actually matters very little. I mean, obviously you need to be understanding what's happening and some of the little bits going on behind the scenes. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, AI is only useful if you're actually using it for stuff that makes sense. If there's essentially an end consumer that's going to get value from it, and we lose sight of that so much, and we focus so much of, oh, this is great, we can do all this stuff, versus, oh, actually, these are the same problems we've been trying to solve. I mean, um, it's customer experience. It's trying to make sure that you create better experiences for your customer. And there's a lot of AI that exists out there that doesn't do that. Because it's been built first with a technical mindset of, well, it would be cool to build this, and then you try to work out what the product market fit for it actually is, rather than the opposite. And I know it goes without saying, and it sounds obvious that should be the case, but so many people miss that trick. So from my point of view, I'm quite an evangelist for that point around AI is only as useful as the problems it's solving. And so the book is very much based on that, and very much based on it gives some strategic frameworks and blueprints, and starts to talk about, well, how do I set up my teams in the future? And how do I actually make this successful versus just have these cool tools that end up doing some cool stuff, but they actually don't really move in the dial. They're not really moving the dial.
I think it's a great time to have it out in the market. Let's be honest. I think, a lot of conversations that I'm having are with, various, whether it be CMOs or GMs, etc. And, of course, it is at the forefront for many people. And I think having that area around sort of team structures, and, there's a lot of people also quite concerned around, the implications of AI. Is my job going to be safe? All that scenario. So yeah, definitely a good time to have it in the market for sure. I wanted to sort of, I guess, talk a little bit more around, still to a degree, around sort of AI. But if you, given everything that you now know, if you were, say, I don't know, going back to 25, 26 years old, and you were starting off your marketing career, what areas or what key skills would you be absolutely going, okay, now that I'm looking into the future, what would you be really starting to harness on, or focus in?
I don't know if this is a helpful answer, but I mean, I'd say learn everything. Like you need to. I've talked a lot around how you need those all-round skills, especially in any role, but especially in marketing. And I think AI really heightens the need for this. And so, learn PPC, learn brand, learn even learn design. Even if you're not a designer, learn design, because you need those understandings, and you need to. I talked about the Dunning-Kruger sort of curve before. You need to start working your way down the curve on so many different things. And don't. I think if you want to, I mean, if you want to specialize and become really awesome at something within marketing, then great, become the greatest PPC person in the world, or become fantastic at SEO or whatever. That's great. But if you actually want to progress, and you want to become a CEO, a CMO, or you want to become a senior leader, you need skills in a range of different areas. So I think find a way to learn everything. And the good news on that now, this is hopefully one of the benefits of AI, is that I think learning those new skills, or at least giving you the capability to learn those new skills, will be much faster. And I'm not just talking, I mean, there's ways that AI can sort of help train you. But I think as well as that, like even, let's just say you're not a designer, so you don't have the skills to design, but there's AI tools out there that, give you a massive leg up. Now you still need to learn the basics of design. There's no AI tool that's going to just create logos for you and, create beautiful Instagram creative or whatever. But I think that the leg up that you can potentially get from these AI tools is massive. And so I think I'd leverage that as much as possible. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for, if you want to get to that sort of level, you've got to be a really good all-rounder, and you've got to understand a lot of spaces. And like I say, every area has got a lot of complexities, but marketing probably more than any. And it's only becoming increasingly so as businesses become more complex and the world becomes more complex. And yeah, getting a handle on that is difficult.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting you've said that, because I'm certainly, as a recruiter, seeing a lot more individuals coming in to sort of be, really wanting to harness and become a specialist. And I know that there's frustrations to a degree at, more the exec level going, well, we've had to really fight to have a seat at the table as a CMO. So I guess that filters really nicely into my next question. What do you see, or how do you see the future of the CMO role evolving?
I mean, I think the CMO role, it's a tough question, but I think it'll become more of a, obviously the stuff that I've talked about in terms of having to broaden and becomes more complex and all that kind of stuff. But I think more than that, you become the conductor of the orchestra a lot more. I'm going to take this back to how you need to think about your teams as a CMO, especially in an AI world, is I think that the teams that you create need to be more filled with all-rounders themselves because I think that's in general, but also with the AI aspect on it as well. And I think that's going to be true for the CMO role as well. You need to be much more and of an all-rounder. And I think those deep specialist things, not all of it, but a lot of it will be replaced or heavily supplemented at least by AI. So your ability as a CMO or any senior leader in a marketing space as to how do you bring all that together? I talked about before questions like, are you going to end up with 25 AI tools running around doing nothing, doing not much, versus how you actually orchestrating that so you're actually creating workflows that are actually efficient. Same's true with your workforce. How's your workforce going to be changing? Your team, I should say. How's your team going to be changing? I like to think about teams in terms of bandwidth and capability. So the whole reason you have a team set up the way you do is primarily bandwidth in terms of you've got X amount of work to do, so you need X amount of people. But the other thing is capability in terms of we need these particular tasks done or these skills, so we need to bring in those skills. And I think in the past, a lot of the this has actually we've ended up with marketing teams which are very fragmented in terms of you will bring in a PPC person, you will bring in a programmatic person, you will bring in a creative person, you'll bring in a creative video person, you'll bring in an SEO person, but you'll bring in a copywriter. I think that's going to, I've called it sort of job bundling. I think those things are going to start to blend more or need to blend more. And it's not necessarily about trying to cut jobs or trying to reduce the size of your team. I just think I think people will have the capability with AI to do more and to stretch into other places. And I think that you're going to need to create new jobs anyway. Like you might need to create a video AI expert. You might need to create some of those things. So you need to free up what's existing. We can't just go down a path where we're just creating more specialized roles.
No.
And the other thing is, I think that teams function. I think that one of the problems marketing teams have got is because you have these such specialist roles, and we've needed to have such specialized roles, you end up with so many handover points in the process. You end up with it has to go to the SEO person, and then it has to go to the copywriting person, and then it goes to the design team and all that kind of stuff. And those workflows are not particularly efficient. If we can actually reduce a lot of those steps by making sure our team can actually work across more areas, then we can actually make things more efficient. And so that's a long-winded way of coming around to sort of say this is where the CMO has to be the conductor of this. They have to create a plan that actually makes their team more efficient because they're being asked to do much more, often with less. And I think that this is the way you've got to actually be thinking about it critically. And it almost becomes like, tech teams have been designed, but like within an inch of their lives over the past sort of 10 or 15 years to make sure you can get that efficiency through agile processes and all those kind of things. And I think marketing teams need to start thinking about their teams in a similar manner because otherwise, you have to have a very efficient marketing team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A question I'm getting a lot, and look, it's hard for me to answer because my answer is I actually don't know, is, what's my view? Like, do you see, is there going to be roles that are just absolutely no longer going to be needed in marketing? Or, you mentioned like an AI videographer, or, is it going to be this influx of roles that you think, okay, we'll probably start to like upskill here because we're going to need it? Like, is there anything there that if you could look into your crystal ball that you potentially foresee?
Can I also say I don't know? So
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that.
No. I don't know, but I would be. I think this point that I'm making though around one way or another, however it looks, people are going to have to do a wider range of things.
Yeah.
And I think that's when even as far as going when I think about my three kids going to school and whatever, like, and how are they going? What are they going to be educated for in the once they sort of have careers and all that kind of. It has to be I think the one thing they have to learn is how to learn and it doesn't matter so much what they learn, and they have to really get sort of quite broad with what they're doing. The roles will change massively in marketing teams over the next wee while, but whether or not it'll be less or more in a marketing team, I don't know. Historically, with increased automation, there has been more the same amount of new roles sort of come in to replace the old roles, and just in different ways. I think that's what will happen with AI to a large degree. But at the same time, I think if you're looking to future-proof yourself, you have to be able to do a range of things, because AI is. They think about it under this lens as well. AI is not that good at doing a range of things. AI is very good at giving you specialist stuff, but in terms of actually putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, that's still very much a human skill to be able to do that kind of stuff, and to have those people skills and all that kind of stuff. That's all needed through leadership. That's all always going to be needed, so I think those are the kind of skills that you have to really work on, and to future-proof your role. I think that's where really we are by thinking.
And just finally, before we wrap up, I want to ask, for anyone, that is listening that, really wants to get up to speed, whether it be around, marketing, leadership, AI, all the areas that we've covered today, is there any books or resources? Obviously, we've got your own, but is there anything that you would sort of recommend or that's even helped you throughout your career?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, I got a cop-out answer to this. My first answer would actually be not books or courses or anything like that.
Yeah,
My
okay.
first answer has to be, in some regards, imitation, or it comes from talking to other people, and it comes from looking at others and what they do, and taking things that they do really well and trying to apply that. And there might be things that they don't do as well, and trying not to apply that. But I think that's where we really learn. And that's where a lot of people, I think a lot of people underestimate their ability to learn in that space. And I think people also underestimate, I think if I was to give myself in the early sort of parts of my career one bit of advice, it would be ask other people for that sort of help or mentorship. You sort of have this sort of view earlier in your career that, other people that have done these things, they don't want to give you their time. That's actually very rare, actually, when you find most people actually love to give you their time. They love to talk about their journey. They love to actually give you help and advice and where they can. And so the first place I'd be going to is how do you learn from the others around you, in your team or in your networks, in your wherever you can find people that are doing this successfully. Who can I take out for coffee? Who can I do those things? And you'd be surprised as well. You don't have to be too tactful about it. You don't have to be too strategic. You have to go, this is the person I want to talk to.
Yeah.
Because you might have a random conversation with someone, and there might be just elements that you can take out of their conversation that you never thought might be useful. So that would be the first place I go to. And then obviously there's just so much stuff online these days.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I'd be looking at is how do I find a way in terms of where I can put this stuff into real use? So how can I, if I'm doing a course or whatever, like instead of just doing the course or, even just reading a book or whatever, how can I actually try some of these things in the real world and work off them? Because that's where you're going to get that sort of real feedback.
And apply it.
And whether or not that's in your job or whether or not you have to sort of create it. I learned a lot about marketing from, this is going back a long time ago, but it was during the GFC and I couldn't get a job in London, and I created a dog bed website selling dog beds, and it was just about learning about marketing firsthand. I learned basically how to market, how to do PPC, how to do SEO, how to do all those things just firsthand, rather than trying to learn it from a book. But yeah, buy my book anyway, because
well, little bit of a plug there. Oh, love it. Love it. Well, look, I've really enjoyed it. It's been so good catching up. Thank you. I think there's a lot there that you've said that, I don't know, it's really rung true to me. And I think I really like how you've just been able to simplify a lot there as well. But I think a lot of listeners are going to go, aha, there's going to be a couple of light bulb moments there, hopefully.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, Lucy.
Yeah, brilliant. Remember, the road to CMO isn't always linear. It's filled with challenges, decisions, and moments of transformation. Whether you're charting your course or navigating a career shift, the experiences, wisdom shared today, as with our guests, is invaluable. Thank you for joining us. Keep dreaming big, keep pushing boundaries, and remember that your journey towards becoming a CMO is as much about the destination as it is about the growth you experience along the way. Until next time, continue to innovate, evolve, and carve out your path to CMO.